Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Washington, D.C. on his three-day tour to the United States of America. It's going to be very, very crucial, as it is going to be the last meeting between the Prime Minister as well as the President in their official capacities, because the US elections will be held and we will be seeing a new President of the United States. Let's quickly take a look at the itinerary. What is all going to happen as far as Narendra Modi is concerned? He will hold talks with President Barack Obama to review bilateral ties and address a joint session of the US Congress. Modi arrived at the joint base Andrews from Switzerland, where he secured the support from the country for its NSG membership. Ahead of the key meeting of 48-nation bloc, Modi has a packed schedule, including the address to a joint session of the US Congress. He will be the 6th Indian Prime Minister to do so. Modi will be meeting Obama for the 7th time in 2 years. Prime Minister Modi was received by the US Ambassador to India, Richard Verma, and Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, Nisha Biswal.
I think one of the biggest takeaways will be his speech to Congress. What will he say? How will he highlight India's role? How will he highlight what India is doing for the world and the US, not just the reverse? But I think we'll also perhaps see some announcements on the defense and security side, as well as we'll be looking to see whether there'll be an announcement or some activity in terms of Indian membership in the nuclear suppliers group. And I think a lot of people are watching to see if Westinghouse and NPCI will announce that they will finally announce reactor deal.
Well, there's two things I think that we're looking for very closely. Will they be able to come to final agreement on the logistics sharing agreement that was hinted at during Defense Secretary Carter's visit just a month and a half ago? Second, will Westinghouse be in a position to conclude a project agreement to initiate nuclear power trade with India? It's something that we'd like to see. I mean, that's clearly a part of really kind of opening up the door for bringing India inside the nuclear club, apart from direct trade with the United States. But as always, in these kind of instances, it gives your Prime Minister another opportunity to press our government to push just a little bit harder.
So the United States is now saying that, and this is a goodwill gesture that has come in on the very first day of his three-day tour to the United States, where the US says that they are going to return certain priceless statues, some artifacts. The US returned stolen Indian artifacts to Prime Minister Modi at a ceremony at Blair House in Washington. These include a priceless bronze idol of Lord Ganesh that was removed from a temple in Tamil Nadu, a statue of the Chola period, and a modern dynasty statue. Some of these priceless pieces were stolen from museums and temples and then smuggled into the US. The US Department of Justice and US Department of Homeland Security had painstakingly recovered these stolen idols and are now repatriating them to India. Modi thanked the US for restoring items of India's heritage. Sources have told India Today that this is just the beginning. There are negotiations on for this to be streamlined, and more such statues and stolen Indian heritage items could in fact be returned to India. Let's quickly head across live to Gaurav Sawant, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Good evening, Gaurav, as I should say, looking at your background. It's nice and bright in the morning here in New Delhi, but when the sun shines in Washington, D.C., what all are the engagements that the Prime Minister is going to have, which will be crucial, because the day gone by has been quite eventful, from stolen artifacts being returned, which is a goodwill gesture, to a lot of significant meetings. I would say that, you know, the people connect and all those things happened on day one. How is day two going to be different from day one, considering that this is the last meeting in official capacities for Barack Obama and Modi?
Day two is a day for hard-nosed diplomacy between India and the United States of America. That's in the first part of the day. The second part of the day is for India-US business cooperation. So it's a packed day for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The day begins with an interaction with the US President Barack Obama at the Oval Office. This is a summit-level meeting. There's a legacy issue for the US President. We expect a big takeaway as far as the US-India relations are concerned. While they talk about nuclear energy, while they talk about things that are good for India and the United States, the bigger message the Indian camp tells us is the message that India and the US together, the oldest and the most powerful democracies of the world, take to the world. What is it that the two countries together can do to make this world a better place? That's extremely crucial. So nuclear suppliers group membership will be discussed. MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime, that would be discussed, and that would mean India getting access to a little more technology when it comes to whether unmanned aerial vehicles or missiles. The next meeting, again, extremely crucial. So there's a working lunch, Indian delegation and the American delegation, and then there's a meeting with the US Defense Secretary Ashton Carter, and that is where a big defense agreement is likely to be taken forward. Defense Trade and Technology Initiative, whether it's the logistic support agreement, which means US ships and aircraft can come refuel in India, they get logistic support. Indian ships can refuel in their anti-piracy operations in the Indian Ocean and in anti-piracy operations closer to the Somalian coast. All of that will be on the cards. But there's a big meeting then in the afternoon as far as India then tries to draw in US investments. Now, I interviewed Mukesh Aghi, the president of the US-India Business Cooperation of the Business Council, and he said investment is up from $7 billion to $12 billion, looking up to $17 billion this year and hoping it will go up to $40 billion. So he says if you put your money where your mouth is, that is where the relationship looks better.
Okay. In fact, Gaurav, do stay on with us. We'll ask you a couple of more questions. In the meanwhile, that person, the gentleman that you mentioned, let's quickly play out his interview with Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav interviewed him just a while ago on trade and investment, because this particular meeting, though officially, in an official capacity, is all about, the nuclear suppliers group. India's might as far as a nuclear player is concerned. But what is it going to do, this particular meeting, as far as trade is concerned? Let's take a listen.
Attracting investment in India is one of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's key result areas when he comes to the United States. With me is Dr. Mukesh Aghi, the president of the US-India Business Council. Sir, when the Prime Minister came in 2014, he said India is open for business. What message does the US or the USIBC want to hear in 2016?
I think he delivered on his promise of India is open for business. I think what we want to see is a commitment to open further India, especially on a state level and on ease of doing business.
Because that is the criticism, that there's a lot of rhetoric about India is open for business, but there is a very cumbersome bureaucracy. There is talk of clearances taking a lot of time. Macro reforms that were awaited, they're still awaited.
Well, money talks. If you look at India, was #1 destination for FDI, surpassing China this year, $63 billion. So I think business leaders are finding India much more open. Look at our USIBC members. Last year, they invested roughly $15 billion into India, and this year the number is going almost $27 billion. So I think the sentiment is positive. Yes, you have challenges, but you'll have those challenges any other economy itself.
Now, on day one, the Prime Minister also went to the Arlington Cemetery, where he laid the wreath at the Space Shuttle Columbia Memorial. Sunita Williams and the family of the deceased Kalpana Chawla were also present there. So, Gaurav, 7 meetings that have taken place between the Prime Minister and the President. In some cases, they've broken protocol also. Many would say that for a country which was not very kind to the personality, not the position, but the personality called Narendra Modi in the past, in the backdrop of 2002, has really come around and has really come along and has decided, or perhaps has had a realization that, this is a person who could actually get things done. There is a, perhaps in the, in the Capitol Hill, in the building right behind you, perhaps some sort of a sentiment of a similar nature. Is this going to go forward is the most important question, post Barack Obama.
This will go forward, and how? When we look at India-US relations, all that was talked about in the past is history. Why is this meeting so important? This meeting is important so that when there is a change of administration in the United States, the relationship between India and the US does not fall off the table, and there is no slackening like it happened last time. This time the effort is to ensure, one, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the joint session of the Congress at the Capitol Hill behind me, there is a realization both in India and in the United States that the world's oldest, most powerful and the most vibrant democracies have to be together, not just for each other, but to shape the future of the world. That is a message that will come out of this meeting between Barack Obama and Narendra Modi, and Barack Obama's address to the US House of Congress and the Senate. So that's extremely important. What's the message that India and the US have for the world together? One part of the story. Second part of the story, it can't be a unipolar world. It can't just be America here, militarily Russia, or economically China. India is a very, very important counterbalance and a democracy. So militarily and economically, India's strength is being increased systematically and gradually. So India's economic strength and India's military strength. And this is not happening because America wants it. This is happening because India automatically is in a position to take that position in the world. As far as India's economy is concerned, India requires energy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it very clear that 40% of India's energy needs 2040. So what do you need? You need renewable energy and you need nuclear energy. For that, India has to be a part of the nuclear suppliers group, MTCR, and mind you, MTCR is a real possibility in the next couple of days. India being in missile technology control regime, an enabler for the NSG to meet India's energy requirements. So very, very positive movements happening for the betterment of the world is the way India and the US want to put it out.
Absolutely. Gaurav Sawant, for the moment, thanks very much for joining us with this comprehensive report. You have a busy day ahead for the next 2 days as the Prime Minister's continuous engagements at that particular meeting in Washington, D.C. only continue. Will India be able to take back home a lot more than just those stolen artifacts is the most important point, and we'll keep tracking all the latest details from Washington, D.C. In fact, let's quickly listen in to a few more interviews that Gaurav Sawant took, particularly as far as the cemetery is concerned, where the Prime Minister was laying his wreath. Gaurav Sawant spoke to a whole lot of other leaders also.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was here at the Arlington Cemetery. He also came to the Columbia Space Shuttle Memorial. With me is Kalpana Chawla's husband. When we talk of Kalpana Chawla, it's a story of the dream of not just one woman, but many girls in India who'd aspire to touch the sky with glory and beyond. The Prime Minister was here. What was your conversation like?
Well, it was very pleasant. I gave Mr. Modi a copy of a book that was published by NASA Ames, where Kalpana started her career, and I managed to find quite a few people who worked with Kalpana, and they got them to sign the book for Mr. Modi. I gave him a copy of my biography of Kalpana also, and some mission patches, and he seemed very appreciative of that.
He spent some time here. He also commented on your jacket, which is from his state, which is from Gujarat. Did he talk about how India and the US are also working very closely in space moving forward?
No, he didn't mention that at all, but I know about that, and I think it's a very good thing.
Right. And he was here briefly. What was your conversation like with others, with everyone here?
I don't know, because I couldn't hear. And the only person I could hear was Neha, and all they really did was exchange greetings.
Right. And Ms. Sunita Williams was also here. He spoke to her, your family. He interacted with that. Do you think that will inspire other people to come forward and to move forward in perhaps knowing more about space, trying to be an astronaut, especially young girls in India?
I don't think it's so much what we do. It's Kalpana's already done the work. Kalpana's the inspiration, not so much us.
So many thanks for speaking to India today. There is one thing that you must see here. This is in the memory of the crew of the US Space Shuttle Columbia, 1st February 2003. The entire crew, all the crew, their names are mentioned here. And the Arlington Cemetery, the ceremony here was a very poignant one. With cameraman Kirpal Singh at the Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
As Prime Minister Modi embarks on his most difficult nuclear mission abroad to get India access to the nuclear suppliers group, India Today's Gaurav Sawant reports at every step from Washington, D.C.
Business, strategy, economy and security. Join me, Gaurav Sawant, as I report on the crucial Modi-Obama summit in Washington, D.C., only for India Today.
India first at home and abroad.